Well, it's clear that, and the work that's been taking place with the global stocktake, preparations for that, that we are way off track. Report after report, whether it is our own synthesis reports, whether it is the IPCC, whether it is others, that in terms of the global response to the crisis, we're nowhere near where we need to be. And as we see weather report after weather report, news report after news report, disaster after disaster, we're seeing the impacts of climate change. We're seeing the impacts, whether it's on communities, lives, livelihoods, literally on a daily basis now. So the need and the call for additional action is not only timely, it's urgent. The global stocktake is a review coming out of the Paris Agreement in 2015, what progress has been made, what progress is yet to be made, where those gaps are, but also in terms of looking at best practices, what is working and how that could be used to fill some of those gaps. But as well as taking stock, what is more critical, and we'll see the decisions that parties make over the coming weeks between now and COP28, what is more significant is how do countries respond to that stocktake, to those deficiencies, and the opportunities that are presented in terms of shared knowledge, shared experience to fill those gaps. But some of the difficult decisions that need to be made as to how implementation, ambition, and closing that implementation gap, it is in the hands of parties and some of the decisions that are expected coming out of COP28. Coming back to the global stocktake, a strong, forward-looking response. How can those gaps be closed? But in addition to that, finance. Finance is at the heart of driving ambition, and whether it's seeing a delivery of the much focused 100 billion per year, building or re-establishing trust amongst developing countries on the delivery of those finances, whether it's the calls for doubling adaptation finance. As mitigation efforts fall short, the need to adapt ever increases. But again, the means to implement are centerfold. And then loss and damage. We had, coming out of COP28 in Sharm el-Sheikh, that historic decision in terms of the establishment of a loss and damage fund and funding arrangements. But the work that's been taking place over the course of this last year through the Transitional Committee in terms of what does operationalization look like? What are the actions? What are the mechanisms that need to be put in place to bring this to the fore? Will be an important outcome of this upcoming COP. And there is still a great deal of work that needs to be done in terms of bringing clarity as to what operationalization looks like. We are not where we need to be. And you just have to turn on the television, look at the news reports, disaster after disaster. We are off track, but the positive is that there are very clear prescriptions what's required in terms of getting us back on track. What is lacking right now is the political will to make some of the difficult decisions that are required, and at the heart of that is financing and the need to provide the means, certainly for developing countries, to get to where they need to be in terms of navigating the crisis. But in terms of the major emitters, those 20 countries, 80% of emissions, 85% of global GDP. The means are there to address this. What is lacking, as said, is application. Well, I think the tuning out, it becomes more difficult when things start happening on one's own doorstep. And we have seen a lot of the impacts that have impacted the most vulnerable, far distant lands. But we've seen over the course of this summer, whether it's in North America, whether it's across Europe, where communities, homes are burning due to forest fires and other impacts. This is now so close to home to most of us. It is actually hard to tune out. Those who need to tune in are those with the means to directly impact some of the solutions that are needed in order to course correct.